Out of every 10 machine gunners who went into battle during the First World War, fewer than 3 would see the war's end. They carried the most feared weapon on the battlefield, could cut down dozens of men in seconds, and were absolutely essential to their army's survival. But here's the dark truth. Being assigned to a machine gun crew wasn't an honor or a privilege. It was essentially a death sentence. This is the brutal reality of why machine gunners had one of the most terrifying and deadly jobs in all of human warfare. Let's start with the weapon itself. The machine gun wasn't new when World War I began, but it had never been used on this scale before. The British relied heavily on the Vickers machine gun, a water-cooled monster that weighed 57 pounds without its tripod. The Germans had their MG-08, which could fire up to 600 rounds per minute. These weren't the portable weapons you might imagine from movies. They were heavy, complex machines that required a crew of at least 3 to 4 men to operate effectively. When the war broke out in 1914, most military leaders still believed in the power of cavalry charges and bayonet attacks. They saw machine guns as defensive tools, useful for protecting positions but not much else. That misconception would cost millions of lives. Within months, it became clear that a handful of well-positioned machine guns could stop entire battalions in their tracks. What followed was 4 years of tactical evolution, but the men behind those guns paid the ultimate price for every lesson learned. Here's what made being a machine gunner so deadly. First, you were a priority target for literally everyone on the enemy side. Infantry, artillery, snipers, and aircraft all had one goal when they spotted your position: eliminate the machine gun nest at any cost. Your weapon's muzzle flash gave away your location every time you fired. During night attacks, it was like lighting a beacon that screamed, quote, "Here I am, kill me." Enemy snipers would spend hours studying the battlefield, waiting for that telltale flash. Once they spotted it, they'd focus all their attention on your position. Artillery crews received constant orders to target machine gun positions. A single gun could hold up an entire advance, so commanders would call in massive bombardments just to eliminate one crew. Shells weighing hundreds of pounds would rain down on your position. Even if a direct hit didn't get you, the concussion could rupture your lungs or the shrapnel could tear you apart. Many machine gunners didn't die from enemy bullets. They were buried alive when artillery strikes collapsed their dugouts, or blown to pieces when shells landed directly on their positions. But the immediate danger was just the beginning. Machine gun crews faced unique challenges that other soldiers didn't have to worry about. Your weapon required massive amounts of ammunition. A typical Vickers gun could burn through 250 rounds per minute during sustained fire. That meant constant supply runs under enemy fire. Ammunition bearers had to crawl through no man's land, dodging bullets and shells, just to keep your gun operational. When supplies ran low, you became useless, but getting more ammunition often meant sending men to their deaths. Water-cooled guns like the Vickers created another problem. The cooling system prevented the barrel from overheating, but it also meant you needed a constant supply of water. In the middle of a battle, finding clean water was nearly impossible. Crews would use anything they could find: urine, muddy shell crater water, even melted snow mixed with blood. When the cooling system failed, your gun would seize up in minutes. A red-hot barrel was worse than no gun at all because you couldn't fire and you couldn't move quickly. Could you imagine the desperation of fighting with a weapon you couldn't rely on? Then there was the weight factor. Moving a machine gun position wasn't like relocating with a rifle. The gun itself, the tripod, the ammunition, and the cooling equipment could weigh over 200 pounds total. During an advance or retreat, machine gun crews moved slowly, making them easy targets. Many crews were wiped out not during battle, but while trying to relocate their equipment. They'd be caught in the open, weighed down by their gear, with nowhere to run. The psychological pressure was unlike anything else in the war. When you pulled that trigger, you weren't shooting at one enemy soldier. You were mowing down dozens of men at once. Machine gunners watched waves of infantry charge across no man's land, only to cut them down like wheat. Some gunners reported killing over 100 men in a single engagement. The mental toll was devastating. Many suffered what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder, but back then it was called shell shock, and little help was available. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect was what happened when your position was overrun. Enemy soldiers showed no mercy to captured machine gunners. These men had just watched their friends cut down by your weapon. Rage and vengeance took over. Captured machine gunners were often executed on the spot, sometimes in brutal ways that served as warnings to other crews. The Geneva Convention existed, but in the heat of battle, after watching your comrades slaughtered, Few soldiers cared about treating machine gunners as prisoners of war. Life expectancy for machine gunners varied by battle and position, but statistics paint a grim picture. During the Battle of the Somme in 1916, some machine gun companies suffered casualty rates exceeding 90%. The Battle of Passchendaele saw entire crews wiped out in minutes. At Verdun, German machine gunners held their positions for months, but unit rotation records show most crews were replaced 3 to 4 times due to casualties. German machine gunners faced additional challenges because their tactics relied heavily on defensive positions. They'd be ordered to hold a position at all costs, which often meant fighting until the last man. The German MG-08 was incredibly effective, but its crew knew they were expected to die at their posts rather than retreat. Many German machine gun nests became tombs for their operators. Medical care for wounded machine gunners was often inadequate. Their positions were usually in forward areas, far from medical stations. When a crew member was hit, evacuation was nearly impossible under fire. Many bled to death waiting for help that never came. Others were finished off by enemy fire while trying to crawl to safety. The lucky ones died quickly from direct hits. The unlucky ones suffered for hours with wounds that could have been treated if they'd been anywhere else on the battlefield. Training for machine gun crews was intense, but couldn't prepare them for the reality of combat. Recruits learned to disassemble and reassemble their weapons blindfolded. They practiced calculating ranges and adjusting for wind and elevation. But no training could prepare them for the psychological impact of mass killing or the constant fear of being targeted by every enemy weapon in range. As the war progressed, both sides developed new tactics specifically to counter machine guns. Creeping artillery barrages were designed to suppress gun positions during infantry advances. Specialized assault troops learned to approach gun nests from blind spots. Aircraft began strafing machine gun positions with increasing accuracy. Every innovation made the machine gunner's job more dangerous. By 1918, the average life expectancy of a machine gunner in active combat was measured in days, not weeks or months. Some crews didn't survive their first engagement. Others lasted longer, but were eventually worn down by the constant stress, inadequate supplies, and endless enemy attention. The few who survived the entire war were changed forever by what they'd experienced. The machine gun revolutionized warfare, but that revolution was built on the bodies of the men who operated these weapons. They wielded incredible destructive power, but that power made them marked men from the moment they took their positions. Being a machine gunner in World War I wasn't just dangerous, it was a near-certain death sentence, wrapped in the illusion of military importance. If this glimpse into WW1 shocked you, subscribe for more untold stories of forgotten soldiers. Which untold chapter of the Great War do you want us to uncover next? Tell us in the comments. See you in the next one.